Get ready to have your timbers shivered because this is a good old-fashioned horror tale from the sea. Let's get started. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Thumb Together. My name is Andrew Fantasia, and today we're going to be talking about The Lighthouse together. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up and give some love to that subscribe button as well. Otherwise, I will be isolated on a barren rock somewhere on the East Coast, and nothing good will follow. And in that little joke, I kind of just summed up the plot of The Lighthouse. This is the new horror film by Robert Eggers. He's the guy who made The Witch, one of my favorite horror films of all time, so I was ready to double dip that chip and see what else Robert Eggers had in store for me. And what he had in store for me was The Lighthouse. Do I think it lives up to The Witch? Do I think it falls short? Do I think it's better? Here's the answer. The Lighthouse follows the exploits of these two guys who are lighthouse keepers in the 1890s. Robert Pattinson plays Winslow, who is a young, up-and-coming lighthouse keeper. This is his first time on the job, and he's learning the tools of the trade. Who's he learning them from? Why, he's learning them from Willem Dafoe, of course. Willem Dafoe plays Thomas Wake, who has been a lighthouse keeper for a long, long time, and before that, he was a sailor. Like all sailors from the era, Wake is incredibly superstitious and salty and curmudgeonly, and like all young men from the era, Winslow is just trying to make money, start a family, and live a peaceful life. As the film begins, it clearly explains to us that these two guys are about to start a 4-week shift at the lighthouse, after which someone will come by boat and relieve them. But as you've probably expected, those 4 weeks tend to bleed together, and by the end of the film, you're not really sure how much time these dudes have actually spent on this isolated chunk of rock. Have they been there for 4 weeks? Have they been there for 4 days? Have they been there for years and years? The film doesn't make that clear. And even though I really liked a lot of what I saw in The Lighthouse, I think that its biggest downfall is the fact that at the end of the day, it doesn't make anything clear. Unfortunately, this is not the horror masterpiece that The Witch was. And I think from a personal standpoint, the reason I believe that to be the case is because in The Witch, you have a very tangible threat. You have the witch. And Eggers establishes the witch's existence right off the bat. You know she's there. You know she's coming. You know she's tormenting the family. You can put your finger on everything that's happening. In The Lighthouse, you can put your finger on nothing that is happening. It's as disorienting and confusing as a fever dream, and I get that that's the point, but when I walk away from it thinking, you haven't really scared me or got under my skin or made an impression, you've just confused me. And in this particular case, confusion isn't really synonymous with great storytelling. Where does the horror of The Lighthouse come from? It could come from a million different places. It could come from the isolation that these two men feel, the claustrophobia that they feel. It could come from their own damaged psyches and the way they treat one another. It could come from a supernatural external force. And what bugged me about The Lighthouse was it seemed to try to say that the horror was coming from all of these things without ever really specifying if any of them were actually happening. At times it pointed towards the isolation. At times it pointed towards the deranged minds of both of these men. At times it pointed towards not one, but 3 different external supernatural forces without ever giving a clear indication if any of them actually exist. And to be real, I'm just not a fan of that. But that's not to say that The Lighthouse does not have its share of really cool merits. For one thing, it was filmed in a very full-screen look and aspect ratio to really heighten the claustrophobia. This whole movie looks like this. And after 110 minutes of 2 guys rolling around in a very small confined space in this format, you're going to feel claustrophobic too. You're going to feel like you're way too close for comfort and you want to get as far away from both of these men as possible. Also, according to what I've read, the movie was filmed using modern cameras with 100-year-old lenses. And the result is this really cool mixture where you have these crisp, clear black and white images that still somehow look like pictures that were taken at the time that the movie is supposed to be set in the 1890s. This first shot establishing our 2 lead heroes is eerily similar to a photo you would see in an old history textbook. And I think those lenses are to thank for this. Then there's the dialogue. Again, The Witch proved that Robert Eggers knows how to write really good, time-sensitive dialogue. He stuck to Old English with The Witch, and he knocked it out of the park. Here, you've got a mixture of 2 different 1890s cultures. You've got Robert Pattinson, who's just sort of an everyman, an East Coast. He's got almost a Kennedy kind of vibe to his cadence, and he's just there on this lighthouse talking about how he needs work, and he came down from a logging company in Canada, and now he's here. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got Willem Dafoe, who is the saltiest sea dog you will ever meet. Guys, Willem Dafoe in this movie is straight up the sea captain from The Simpsons. It is the sea captain from The Simpsons brought to life in 3 dimensions, complete with corncob pipe and everything. This guy sits around talking superstitious sailor talk, saying, "Ooh, it'd be bad luck to kill a seabird, for the seabirds contain the souls of dead sailors, I tell you true." This guy is the reason to watch The Lighthouse. Willem Dafoe, every time he opens his mouth, is entertaining. At one point, my favorite scene of the film, I'm not going to spoil the context, but the two are getting into an argument, and Robert Pattinson makes a very small comment regarding the fact that he doesn't like Willem Dafoe's cooking. In response to this, Willem Dafoe stands up and delivers what I think was a 3-minute monologue in bombastic Shakespearean quality seafarer talk, cursing Robert Pattinson for not liking his cooking and asking the sea god Neptune to strike him down with a fate worse than death for daring to make such an outrageous comment. That is one of the greatest things I have seen in movies all year. And needless ambiguity of The Lighthouse's horror aspects aside, it is still really, really entertaining to watch these two men interact with one another. I can't stress enough how much fun Willem Dafoe's character is to watch. So that is The Lighthouse. It's not quite the masterpiece that The Witch was, in my opinion, but it still is a gorgeous looking, classic American horror tale brought to life on the big screen. If you've ever read Jules Verne, The Lighthouse at the End of the World, or Ray Bradbury's The Foghorn, this is going to be so reminiscent of those two that it's going to pop you right into the worlds that those authors created. Just as The Witch was a New England folktale come to life, so too was this, albeit in a different vein. Watch it for yourself, make your own conclusions. Maybe you'll see something I didn't, in which case please tell me, because I want to know more. I'm really curious about what was actually going on in this lighthouse. But anyway, that's The Lighthouse. I'm Andrew Fantasia. That's Thumb Together for today. I'll see you all here next time, and until then, adios.